Let's jump right in. We're about to unpack a letter that's nearly 2,000 years old, but believe me, it has all the drama of a modern-day story. We're talking about conflict, a leader at his breaking point, and a final warning that just changes everything. So, that quote right there, that's the Apostle Paul writing to a church he himself started in a city called Corinth. And yeah, that is not a friendly hello. That is an ultimatum, and it sets the stage for one of the most intense showdowns in the entire New Testament.
So what in the world is going on here? Well, this isn't some minor disagreement. Paul, who says he feels a kind of parental love for this community, is in a total standoff with them. He's getting ready for his third trip to see them, and this time it is not going to be a friendly reunion. He's coming to set things straight.
To put it bluntly, the church in Corinth was a mess. You had strife, gossip, arrogance, a total breakdown. Paul's opponents were stirring up trouble, questioning his authority, even accusing him of being some kind of fraud. So Paul just lays down the law. He tells them he's on his way, and any accusation of wrongdoing is going to be investigated using the principle of 2 or 3 witnesses, which is a serious legal standard from Jewish law. This isn't a social call, it's an intervention. And he says it flat out, I will not spare anyone. He's done being lenient.
And this brings us right to the heart of the whole mess. It really plays out like a courtroom drama. The Corinthians are basically putting Paul on trial. They're telling him, prove it. Prove that God is actually speaking through you. Show us some proof that you are a real apostle. It's a huge, high-stakes challenge to his entire life's work.
Paul's response to this is, well, it's both brilliant and kind of terrifying. He accepts their challenge. He says, oh, you want proof? Fine, I'll give you proof. But, and this is key, the proof he's going to offer is not what they want to see. It's not going to be a flashy miracle or some eloquent speech. It's going to be severe apostolic discipline. And this right here, this slide just nails the disconnect. See, the Corinthians were looking for a superstar, a charismatic leader, a polished speaker, someone who looked triumphant and powerful. But Paul's whole idea of leadership was the complete opposite. It was rooted in weakness, in the model of a crucified Savior, and in a power that came from God, not himself. They were speaking 2 totally different languages when it came to what real strength even looked like. So you have to understand just how serious this is. If this church refuses to get its act together, what's Paul's final move? What's the last card he has to play? Well, one scholar suggests that Paul really only has one option left, to declare that they have failed the test so badly that they aren't even a Christian community at all. I mean, can you imagine a truly devastating final judgment? So Paul has them completely cornered. He's accepted their challenge, and he has raised the stakes to a level they couldn't have imagined. But then, right at the peak of all this tension, he pulls off one of the greatest plot twists you'll ever see. Instead of launching into a big defense of himself, Paul just flips the entire trial on its head. He takes the mirror they were holding up to his face, and he turns it right back on them. And there it is, the line that changes everything. He says, "Stop testing me, you need to be testing yourselves." He takes their demand for proof and throws it right back at them. He's saying the people on trial here, it's not me, it's you.
And he is not being casual about this. The Greek words he uses here are really specific. Examine is perazzoso, which means to probe something to figure out what it's really made of. And test is dokimazoso, which is like a critical inspection to see if something is the real deal or just a cheap fake. He is demanding a deep, honest, no-holds-barred self-assessment.
Now, here's a super important detail. When Paul says to test if Christ is in you, he's actually using the plural form of the word you. So this isn't just about individual soul-searching. He's asking them, is Christ evident among you all, as a group, in the way you treat each other, and the overall health of your community? The evidence they need to look at is their collective behavior. Okay, so after that dramatic pivot, Paul doesn't just leave them hanging. He shifts gears from confrontation to offering a clear, practical prescription for how they can actually heal their broken community and, pass the test he just gave them.
First, he grounds them in a core truth. He reminds them of the good news, that we can come to Jesus exactly as we are, with all our faults.
But, and this is a huge but, we absolutely do not remain as we are. Following Jesus means changing. It demands transformation. Paul is making it crystal clear that things like ongoing sin, division, and gossip are just not compatible with genuine faith.
There's a great analogy for Paul's mindset here. The phrase sinning saint is basically an oxymoron. It's a contradiction in terms. It makes about as much sense as calling someone a righteous liar or an honest thief. For Paul, certain behaviors are simply proof that you're failing the test of faith.
So what's the remedy? He gives them this 5-step daily dose for community health, and it's incredibly practical. Put things in order, listen to my appeal, find a way to agree, live in peace, greet one another. These aren't some deep, complicated theological ideas. They're basic, actionable commands for how to be a healthy group of people.
But Paul knows that just telling them what to do isn't enough. I mean, they need the power to actually pull it off. So in the final lines of his letter, he points them to the incredible resources they have right at their fingertips. He reminds them of 2 sources of strength. First, a human one they had completely forgotten about, the community itself, the fellowship of believers supporting each other. But then he points them to the greatest resource of all, the divine grace of God.
And this famous benediction, a line many of us have probably heard 1,000 times, it's not just a polite way to sign off the letter. In this context, it's everything. It's the power supply. The grace, the love, and the fellowship of God are the things that make it possible for them to put things in order, to live in peace, and ultimately to pass the test. It's the solution to the entire conflict.
So, this nearly 2,000-year-old letter leaves us with a pretty powerful and timeless question, doesn't it? When we find ourselves in the middle of a conflict, when we're pointing fingers and demanding proof from other people, what if we actually took Paul's advice? What if our first instinct wasn't to test them, but to turn that mirror inward and test ourselves?